During a naval ceremony honoring SEAL teams, Admiral Blackwood spots a quiet man in a worn jacket standing at the back of the hangar. With a smirk, he calls out to him in front of everyone. "What's your call sign, hero?" The crowd laughs as the Admiral continues his mockery. The veteran remains silent, eyes fixed on some distant point. When finally pressed too far, he raises his head and speaks just two words that instantly freeze every person in the room. Veterans straighten. The Admiral's face drains of color, and suddenly everyone understands exactly who they've been laughing at. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more untold tales of quiet heroes among us. The air in the boatyard hung thick with salt and diesel, broken only by the rhythmic sound of Thorn Merrick's work. His scarred hands moved with practiced precision across the weathered hull of an aging fishing boat, each motion economical and sure. Dawn had barely broken over West Haven Harbor, casting long shadows across the dock, where he'd spent nearly every morning for the past 7 years. Thorn paused, straightening his back and running a hand through his close-cropped hair, now more salt than pepper. At 43, his face carried the weathered lines of a man who had spent considerable time outdoors, but something about his eyes suggested those years hadn't all been spent on peaceful waters. They scanned his surroundings with a subtle vigilance that seemed unnecessary in a quiet marina. The sound of footsteps on the dock made him turn. Lana approached carrying 2 travel mugs, her steps light despite the early hour. At 16, she had her mother's delicate features but carried herself with a quiet confidence all her own. "You left without eating again," she said, offering him one of the mugs. Thorn accepted it with a nod. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get an early start on the Callahan boat." Lana leaned against a piling, watching him work. She'd inherited his economy of words, their conversations often consisting more of comfortable silences than lengthy discussions. They communicated through small gestures, a coffee brought to the dock, a favorite meal prepared without asking, a mechanical pencil left on her music stand when she needed one. "I need this signed," she said finally, pulling a folded paper from her backpack. "Field trip to the naval base next week for music program fundraising." Thorn's hand hesitated almost imperceptibly over the permission slip. Something flickered behind his eyes before he carefully smoothed his expression. "What's it for?" he asked, voice casual. "Some ceremony for returning SEAL teams. Principal Finch thinks we might get donations for the arts program if we show up and play. They're cutting our funding unless we raise $10,000. Thorn nodded slowly, staring at the form without taking it. Lana noticed his reluctance and frowned. "It's just a field trip, Dad." "I know," he said, but his eyes remained on the slip as if it might contain hidden dangers. Finally, he wiped his hands on a rag and took the paper, signing it with quick precision. "What time?" "Bus leaves at 8. Parents are welcome, too. They need chaperones." Thorn handed the slip back without comment, turning to his work again. Lana recognized the subtle dismissal, but pressed on. "You could come. You never come to school things." "I've got boats to fix," he said, adjusting a clamp with more attention than it required. Lana watched him, head tilted slightly. "You avoid anything military. Every Veterans Day, every Memorial Day parade, you walk the other direction when you see Commander Adler in town." Thorn's shoulders tensed slightly. "I've got no quarrel with Commander Adler." "Then why do you duck into stores when he comes down the street?" The question hung in the air between them. Lana waited, but Thorn remained focused on his work, his back to her. "Fine," she said finally, hefting her backpack. "I've got to go. Orchestra practice after school, so I'll be late." Thorn nodded without turning. "I'll leave dinner in the oven." After she left, he stopped working, his gaze drifting across the harbor to the naval vessels visible in the distance. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly before he returned to his task, his movements now sharper, less fluid. West Haven was small enough that everyone claimed to know everyone else's business, yet large enough that secrets could still find shelter if kept carefully enough. Thorn had arrived 7 years ago with a 1-year-old daughter and few possessions, renting the small boatyard that had been slowly falling into disrepair. He'd rebuilt it methodically, establishing a reputation for honest work and fair prices. He kept to himself but was unfailingly polite, helping neighbors when storms threatened and joining community cleanups without being asked. Yet he remained a mystery. Some said he'd been military. His bearing and efficiency suggested it, but he never confirmed nor denied it. He avoided questions about his past with such practiced casualness that most stopped asking. His only regular social contact outside of work was with Adreja Collins, the town librarian who supplied Lana with books and occasionally shared a cup of coffee with Thorn when she dropped them off. That afternoon, the school gymnasium buzzed with concerned parents. Budget cuts had threatened programs across the district, but the arts had taken the heaviest hit. Thorn sat in the back row, arms crossed as Principal Finch outlined the crisis. "The music program needs $10,000 by the end of the semester, or we lose the orchestra and band," Finch explained, his bow tie slightly askew as he gestured at projection slides. "We've arranged a potential partnership with a naval base. They're holding a ceremony honoring SEAL teams next week. Our orchestra has been invited to perform." Parents murmured approval. West Haven's proximity to the base meant many families had military connections. Thorn remained silent, his face revealing nothing. "Several high-ranking officers will attend, including Admiral Riker Blackwood," Finch continued. "Potential donors as well. If we make a good impression, the program might secure funding beyond what we need." From her seat with the other orchestra students, Lana searched for her father's eyes, but he was watching Principal Finch with unusual intensity. As the meeting ended, Parents clustered around Finch, offering help with transportation and refreshments. Thorne moved quietly toward the exit, avoiding the crowd. Mr. Merrick. He turned to find Adreja Collins, her arms full of sheet music. She'd volunteered as the orchestra's assistant director when budget cuts reduced the music teacher's hours. Ms. Collins, he acknowledged with a slight nod. Lana's solo is coming along beautifully, she said, falling into step beside him as he headed for the parking lot. Her mother taught her well. Thorne's face softened slightly. Sarah loved that cello. Started Lana on it when she was barely big enough to hold it. The Naval Base ceremony could be a good opportunity for Lana to be heard by people who might help her get scholarships later. She mentioned she wanted me to chaperone, he said, voice neutral. Adreja studied him. Will you? I'm not good with crowds. You're not good with military functions, she corrected gently. There's a difference. Thorne stopped walking, turning to face her fully. What makes you say that? Adreja met his gaze without flinching. I noticed things like how you can identify every ship in the harbor by silhouette alone, how you scan rooms before entering them, how you position yourself with your back to walls. Habits, he said dismissively. Trained habits, she countered. My brother served 3 tours before coming home. He has the same ones. Thorne resumed walking, his pace slightly faster. I've got work waiting. She needs you there. Adreja called after him. Some ghosts follow us for a reason, Thorne. He didn't turn, but his stride faltered momentarily before he continued to his truck. That night, after Lana had gone to bed, Thorne stood in his bedroom staring at the closet. After a long moment, he pulled a chair over and reached to the highest shelf, retrieving a metal box coated with dust. He placed it on the bed without opening it, staring at it as if it might contain something volatile. He hadn't touched it in years. A sound from down the hall made him quickly return the box to its place. He lay in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, sleep elusive. When it finally came, it brought dreams that had become less frequent over the years but never less vivid. Explosions, shouted orders in Arabic, the weight of a comrade over his shoulders, blood soaking through his uniform, a voice on the radio ordering them to abort, his own voice calm despite everything, refusing the order. Then darkness, pain, and the faces of children huddled in a basement looking up at him with terrified eyes. He woke before dawn, sweat-soaked and breathing hard. For several minutes, he focused on slowing his heart rate, using techniques long ago ingrained. When he finally rose, decision made. The first hints of sunrise were just beginning to color the horizon. Lana found him in the kitchen making breakfast, an unusual occurrence that made her pause in the doorway. Everything okay? She asked cautiously. Fine, he said, sliding a plate of eggs and toast toward her. Eat. We'll be late. Late for what? School. I need to talk to Principal Finch about chaperoning that field trip. Lana's face brightened instantly. You're coming? Thorne nodded once, turning back to the stove. What changed your mind? He was quiet for a moment, then said simply, You did. The afternoon before the field trip, Thorne gathered the students in the orchestra room to review protocol for the naval base visit. His normally reserved demeanor had shifted to something more authoritative, and the teenagers responded to it instinctively. You'll need ID at the checkpoint, he explained. Follow directions immediately and without question from any uniformed personnel. Stay with your assigned group. The base is a secure facility. Wandering off could get you detained. One boy raised his hand. My dad says they have the new Virginia-class submarines there. Will we get to see those? No. The ceremony is in Hangar 4. You won't be anywhere near the submarines, Thorne answered with such specificity that several students exchanged glances. How do you know which hangar? Another student asked. Thorne hesitated only briefly. It was in the information packet. The student frowned. Mine just said Naval Base Ceremony. Mr. Merrick, one of the girls interrupted, were you in the military? The room grew quiet, all eyes on Thorne. He met their gaze calmly. We're discussing tomorrow's field trip. Your bus leaves at 8 o'clock. Don't be late. The deflection was so smooth that most students simply nodded and returned to packing their instruments. Only Lana noticed the slight tension in her father's shoulders as he turned away. As the students filed out, Adreja approached him. That was quite the briefing, Sergeant. Thorne glanced at her sharply. Excuse me. Just an observation, she said mildly. You've got the tone down perfectly. I've been on base before. Just want the kids prepared. Adreja nodded, accepting the explanation at face value. You seem tense about tomorrow. I don't like crowds. The ceremony is honoring SEAL Team 6 and related units, she said carefully, watching his reaction. Admiral Blackwood will be presenting commendations for something called Operation Nightshade and recognizing the 10th anniversary of the Damascus extraction. If she expected a reaction, she was disappointed. Thorne's expression remained neutral as he gathered his keys. Lana will do well, he said. Her solo is prepared. Thorne, Adreja said, her voice softening. Whatever you're carrying, it doesn't have to be alone. He met her eyes briefly. Some things are better carried alone. And some ghosts follow us for a reason. She repeated her earlier words. Maybe it's time to find out why. That night, after checking that Lana was asleep, Thorne retrieved the metal box again. This time he opened it, revealing sparse contents. A worn photograph with faces purposely blurred, a folded American flag in a triangular display case, and a strange coin unlike any standard currency. He lifted the coin, running his thumb over its surface. Arabic inscriptions circled the edge, surrounding an image of an ancient building. He closed his hand around it tightly before replacing it in the box. As he dressed for the ceremony the next morning, Thorne caught his reflection in the mirror. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans, a blue button-down shirt, and a weathered leather jacket. Nothing that would stand out, nothing that would suggest any connection to the events being commemorated. He touched a faded scar at the base of his neck, partially visible above his collar. It was precisely the shape of the insignia that would be displayed prominently on Admiral Blackwood's uniform today. Staring at his reflection, he whispered, "One day. Just get through one day." The naval base checkpoint was efficient but